Hello, welcome to Good Morning Transfers. We are set for another busy week of transfer business, including developments on Kylian Mbappe's future. Will he sign a contract extension at PSG, or could we see him in the Premier League? On the way this hour, Chelsea step up their business with a defender and midfielder looking set to join the club. A surprise move to Arsenal could be on the cards for Brentford's David Raya. Find out how much Thomas Frank values the keeper. And Manchester United will have a new striker joining them this week after a fee was agreed with Atalanta for striker Rasmus Højlund. A very good morning to you at home and to those watching on the Sky Sports Premier League YouTube channel. Hello to Dan Bardell, to Sam Obaseki and to Dave Reed. It's a pivotal day in the future of Kylian Mbappe. He has until midnight to trigger his option to extend his PSG contract by 1 year. PSG, though, are 99.99% sure he will not take up the option on that contract. Either way, he's due a €60 million loyalty bonus if he's still a PSG player tomorrow. Mbappe turned down a world record £259 million move to Al Hilal last week. Right, Dan, are there any indications whatsoever that he might stay?
Well, you just said PSG are 99.99% sure that he will not be staying, but if we go back to this time last year, it felt very much like he was going to Real Madrid, and then suddenly there was that U-turn. He, of course, signed a 2-year contract last summer. That includes a 12-month extension, which can only be taken by Mbappe himself. PSG can't move to take that option themselves, so that would take him to the end of the 24-25 season if he did take that option, but it appears that there's no chance that Mbappe is going to do that. So everyone's just a little bit in limbo at the moment, aren't they? It's unclear where Mbappe is going to be playing his football. I'm sure both sides would like to get it sorted. I think it's unlikely it's going to get sorted today with the 60 million going into his back pocket tomorrow if he's still a PSG player. So it remains to be seen where Kylian Mbappe will be playing his football next season. But I said on Thursday that I don't trust him really, after whatever happened this time last year. It looked for all intents and purposes that he was going to Real Madrid, and he signed that contract. So who knows, maybe he'll end up signing a contract again.
If it was me, I'd at least stay till tomorrow.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah, I can see why. Everyone at home, where do you think is the best place? Not where you think he'll be, where's the best place for Kylian Mbappe right now? OK, hashtag transfer talk on Twitter, as you know. But Dave, for PSG, how difficult is this for them?
I mean, on the one hand, it's difficult, but on the other, it's a fairly simple equation for them. They've made their mind up. He has to be sold in this window unless there's a major U-turn from the player. And as we've been talking about, that doesn't seem like it's close, or whether that will even happen whatsoever. I guess the only time it will become slightly more difficult for Paris Saint-Germain is if we get close to the start of the season or even the end of this transfer window and he's still a Paris Saint-Germain player. I think even the little things at the moment is heightening the tension. We had pictures on Friday, I think it was. He was signing autographs for fans outside the training ground, and the PSG hierarchy watching this, they know what he's doing. Mbappe knows exactly what he's doing here. He's, trying to keep up that relationship and maintain that relationship with Paris Saint-Germain fans. I think the PSG Ultras have been very, very quiet on this situation at the moment. They're seeing how this one evolves before they take a position either way on Kylian Mbappe. So even those tiny things where he's going out and signing autographs sends a message one way or the other.
I mean, he still has love for them, do you know what I mean? Obviously, they know the situation. I think they almost played into it a bit last summer, the relationship that he has with the fans, the history that he could make, especially in Europe. They tried to back him in a sense in terms of, get the players that they got in last year and maybe the project that they sold him isn't as far as long as he wanted it to be. And I think Real Madrid are always going to be in that European conversation. Everyone knows that that's where he wants to go. So it just seems like it always looked like happening. That's why I'm surprised that they didn't really put a release clause in the contract that he signed last year. Because if this even happened, they could say, OK, cool, this is the fee that we want. But still, there's not really an actual fee. They're just saying, we know that we want to sell him this summer, which is interesting.
PSG are convinced, from their point of view, that he's already got an agreement in place for a free transfer next year for Real Madrid. I think Paris Saint-Germain are also convinced that they're probably going to get a low ball offer from Real Madrid at some point in this window as well.
Real Madrid are quiet, aren't they? Which is unlike them. It's kind of like they're just bypassers at the moment, waiting to see what unfolds. In Mbappe's defence, he signed a contract that PSG willingly gave him. They put all the stipulations in the contract, and it was agreed between both parties. Mbappe has made it quite clear that he's happy to see out the season with PSG. It's the club that are causing the fuss. Mbappe's well within his rights to run that contract down and leave on a free, because that's what all parties agreed. So, in some ways, I feel a little bit sorry for Mbappe. You say about him being out there with the fans, but he's committed that he'll give 100% for the rest of the season in his defence. So they've got to come up with a solution, because the way he is at the moment is untenable. PSG can't have Mbappe on the books for a whole season and not play him. That just can't happen.
Yeah. So where could he realistically go then, Sam, now?
Realistically, I think it's interesting because, everyone knows he wants to go to Real Madrid. So it's like, they're almost, PSG are saying, if anyone has the best offer on the table obviously was from Saudi. He already rejected to have that conversation. There's now been reports of Liverpool and Chelsea seeing if it would make sense, weighing up their options. And I think a move to the Premier League and a significant fee would be good for PSG. But at the same time, for Mbappe, no Europe. Is that what he'd want? Does he really believe that he won't be playing at PSG if he does stay, because he's arguably the best player in the world? It is highly unlikely that they would go the first 10 games and have him just sitting on the bench. The fans won't be happy as soon as they stop scoring or they start conceding and they're not winning games. That will be another uproar that they don't want. So I think the realistic options is probably the Premier League, because Liverpool and Chelsea would be able to pay the fee, and it's something that could possibly happen. But
do you think Liverpool would be able to pay the fee?
I think the fee that they want for a loan, not potentially the fee that we've been hearing, around 250 or over 200 million. But if they wanted, significantly less for a loan and the wages off their bill, I think that they would be open to it.
Well, Liverpool, actually, a few of the viewers, modern day Del Boy says that he thinks Liverpool's the best place for Kylian Mbappe. So does Sean Granger as well. And Kate, who's a Tottenham fan, says that Mbappe should stay at Paris Saint-Germain. Real Madrid should forget about it and they should go for Harry Kane right now. And that's from a Spurs fan, by the way. Anywhere else stick out for you, Dave?
Well, there's quite a few milestones coming up. This saga, if it turns into that, if it isn't already, but there's quite a few significant milestones. We're talking about tonight. The deadline passes for Mbappe to trigger that option from his side to extend his contract. PSG's position then is that he will be sold in this transfer window. Then we've got the 12th of August, which is the start of the Ligue 1 season, PSG beginning against Lorient. We've got the end of the transfer window, end of August, start of September. And then 2-3 days after the end of the transfer window, we've got the Champions League squad deadline. It feels unthinkable to me that Paris Saint-Germain, if Kylian Mbappe was still a PSG player, that he would not be included in that Champions League squad. It would feel like the ultimate ignominy for a player who was signed to win the Champions League for Paris Saint-Germain, for him then not to be included in that Champions League squad. But those are the milestones that we're looking at over the next few weeks.
And this situation with Ousmane Dembele going to Paris Saint-Germain, though, Sam, what might that mean for Mbappe's future?
I mean, it could be their last push to try and, tell him that we're trying to build another team that can challenge for the Champions League. They've been close friends since their days in the France squad. I think when Dembele's contract was ended at Barcelona, Mbappe was saying that he would love for him to join him at PSG. That deal didn't necessarily get done. So I think if they were able to get him over the line and tell Mbappe, we've got your bro here, he's a good player, you guys have got chemistry already. The French fans would love you. You're prepping for, the Euros next season. It could be something potentially, but I think now they're just clutching at straws, to be honest.
Yeah, well, for we've talked about Mbappe for a lot of windows, but Dan, for 2 windows in a row, we've had somebody tweet in asking if you're auditioning to be part of the Pink Ladies. I think you look magnificent. Ignore them all. You look great. Right, OK, let's get to Chelsea, who've been very active over the weekend. They've agreed a deal in principle with Monaco for defender Axel Disasi for a fee in the region of £38.5 million. So what do we know about this deal, Dave?
I'm not sure where to go now after that. Disasi was entering the final 2 years of his contract. The Chelsea manager Mauricio Pochettino had indicated that centre-back was a possible area that they were going to go into in this transfer window, given the the knee injury suffered by Wesley Fofana, he's going to be out for a significant period of time. Disasi had been on the radar of a number of top clubs. I saw Manchester United, Newcastle United were looking at him in this transfer window. From Monaco's perspective, I think they wanted to make sure they had a replacement lined up or already through the door before they signed off on the move. The Southampton defender Mohamed Salisu is one that they have agreed a deal for over the weekend. There's the obvious link between Chelsea and Lawrence Stewart, who was at Monaco as well. So he's a player that the Chelsea hierarchy know well. So Axel Disasi looks like it's going to happen after the deal was agreed over the weekend.
Sam, why do they need a centre-back, Chelsea?
I think it's because of the Fofana injury. I think that affected their plans going forward into the new season. I think Fofana and Thiago Silva were the noticeable players that were going to be challenging for that right centre back position. Chalobah, it's tough on Chalobah, I think, because he's
been sorry for Chalobah.
Yeah, he's been playing a lot during pre-season. You know, Pochettino seems to be trusting him, but also when we look at the fees that you can get for homegrown players, you know, we've seen Mason Mount leave, we've seen the links with Conor Gallagher leaving Chelsea, and I think that is one of the main reasons. He's never really put a foot wrong when he plays for Chelsea. He's obviously not the perfect player in terms of the type of style that Pochettino's asking for in terms of playing out the back. And maybe this signing is something where the board has said this player is perfect for your system. They know him already, and it almost makes sense.
He's played with Badia Shale at Monaco as well, hasn't he? They've had a partnership together in previous years, so that might play into it as well, that you've got a ready-made partnership, two players that know each other well.
Well, he may not be the only incoming at the club, because Chelsea have agreed a deal to sign a midfielder, Leslie Ogochukwu from Rennes. The fee is around £23 million. Chelsea are deciding whether he will go straight into the first team squad or go out on loan. A temporary move to Strasbourg has been talked about. It's what Mauricio Pochettino had to say when asked about potential incomings.
We need an experienced midfielder, yes.
On top of the one we might think that's coming to Chelsea.
Well, but, you know, I don't know the information that you have. My information is a player that is from France, that maybe they are signed with the idea maybe to sell on loan, you know, using different clubs. But that was, the information was already in your laptop, you know.
Well, Chelsea are not giving up on signing Brighton midfielder Moise Caicedo after having their latest bid worth £80 million rejected. Talks are continuing behind the scenes on Chelsea's next move. Given the magnitude of the deal, Chelsea are assessing other options. However, they remain convinced the player wants to make the move to Stamford Bridge. Brighton are understood to want £100 million for Caicedo. So, Dan, forget the figures. How much do Chelsea need him?
Very much so. They're light in central midfield. Otherwise, Sam's looking at me. They're light in central midfield at the moment. They're still not clear what's going to happen with Conor Gallagher. It's just a very inexperienced area of the pitch for Chelsea now. Chelsea, I like what they're doing. They're building this young team. It's going to be an exciting team in the years coming forward. I do think Caicedo would elevate that squad to a different level. I think him and Enzo playing together in central midfield, that's the brightest young midfield probably in the world, isn't it? £200 million players right there. We've been having a little debate in the office this morning because...
Say what you said.
Debate?
Say what you said. Be honest now.
Debate isn't the word for it.
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I've already drawn attention to myself in my jacket, so I'm about to do it again, which I'm wary of doing. But I like what Chelsea are doing. I understand what they're doing. It makes complete sense. I think Pochettino is a top four manager without a doubt. I just think that team that Chelsea have got at the moment, I don't think that's a top six Premier League team at the moment, currently. I think it could well be in a few years and it will probably go beyond that. But as it stands with their squad depth, I don't think that side finishes top six at the moment. Now, this angered Sam. Obviously,
angered.
As a Chelsea fan this morning.
He's so, everyone at home, Sam is so calm, so relaxed, so nice, so kind. If you say that Chelsea might not be a top six side, you see a different side to it.
I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it came from, because we were talking about the team that Chelsea currently have and talking about the defence. I think it's pretty clear in terms of midfield that they need to make reinforcements. Pochettino has said it as well. But when you look at the front line, there's experience, there's goals, there's variety. You look at the defence as well. You've arguably got some of the best full-backs in the league. You've arguably got some of the best centre-backs in the league as well. And you're talking about the depth that they want to add. If they add that depth, then I'm understand how they can't be in that conversation with one of the best managers that has been in the Premier League as well. So when you said it, I just didn't understand it. But you know, each their own.
I'm not saying they won't finish top 6. I'm just saying, I mean, you would look to Brighton's squad last season and said that isn't a top 6 side, and they finished 6th. I just think they have strengthened. I think their side looks good on paper in terms of the players they've brought in. It is a young and vibrant side. I think James and Chilwell, there's always problems with durability. I think they've got the nice backup now in Gusto. I think he looks very, very good.
Maatsen as well.
Yeah, keeper would still be a concern to me as a Chelsea fan. Maybe Mendy not being there, and we're going to come on to keepers later, maybe Mendy not being there actually will help Kepa because he is the undisputed number 1 now. He knows he's going to get the gloves week in, week out. I just think if they take Caicedo, yes, that's a top 6 team, but at the moment, you can't tell me looking at the depth they've got in central midfield that that's a top 6 team.
Sam decided to leave it there. Right. So much more to come. We'll have the latest from Liverpool and we'll be discussing the possibility of Arsenal signing a new goalkeeper. Transfers, and there's some big developing news coming to us from Sky in Germany, and Florian Plettenberg is reporting this. The Bayern bosses are on their way to London right now to meet with Daniel Levy, apparently. So these bosses, by the way, are Dreesen and Neppe. Neppe's arrived at the airport just a few seconds ago, apparently. We're told that they've got a very good and respectful relationship with Daniel Levy, and these negotiations are set to last for a few days. But at the same time, Bayern want this deal finalised in the next few days. They want it done this week, as has been previously reported, by the way. And Kane is just waiting to see if the two clubs can come to an agreement. That's all from Sky in Germany. But Dave, this is a development that we were expecting, but now we know it's something's happening today.
Yeah, this is the chief executive, Jan Christian Dreesen, and the technical director, Marco Neppe, who are on their way here, according to Florian Plettenberg, to continue those negotiations with Daniel Levy. There had been a meeting scheduled for last week that ended up being rescheduled now for this week. So it seems like at the moment things starting to move from Bayern Munich's point of view in the right direction with these talks. Obviously, it's all centring around the fee for Daniel Levy and whether Tottenham are happy to accept that at the moment. It feels from the news that's coming out of Germany that they're expecting a conclusion in the coming days.
Yeah, we'll have more on Kane in just a moment, but the other bit of breaking news is bad news for Sheffield United fans. You've been dreading this because Marseille have reached an agreement with Sheffield United over the transfer of the forward Iliman Ndiaye. He's arrived in France for his medical. We understand the fee will be around £20 million. Remember, though, the player, he's got 12 months left in his contract at Bramall Lane. The club offered him a new deal and were hoping and even expecting he would sign it. He hasn't as of yet, and it looks like he is on his way to Marseille. A medical going on. Well, if he's arrived in France for his medical now, you'd imagine that's going to happen today. But Sam, you've actually know a little bit more about Ndiaye than most. You've been watching him since, well, before any of us even knew his name.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'm actually really happy that he's made that move. Obviously, Sheffield United fans won't be, but they will sing his praises because of the quality he has. The first time I actually saw him play was for Rising Ballers, a YouTube team that get youngsters that have been in and around trials and not been able to make that step up. They put them all in one team, and then they almost, it's like, not selling the players, but you're selling their qualities. You're giving them video footage that they wouldn't have been able to get elsewhere. And since I saw him, I said, yeah, that's one player that's going to be quality. Then I saw what he done for Sheffield United. Now he's making his move to Marseille, which is incredible.
Yeah, he was absolutely brilliant for Sheffield United. I'm sure they will be hoping for some sort of U-turn, those Sheffield United fans. Right, let's get to Liverpool now, who did the majority of their business early in the window. We can speak to sports broadcaster and Liverpool fan, Liam McDevitt. Liam, good morning to you. Great to see you. Romeo Lavia, he's the man Liverpool are after. Are you confident that they'll get this deal done?
Good morning. I hope so. There's talks of that 50 million release clause that Liverpool are yet to get to so far, but he's a player I think would fit in perfect, immense potential. For me, he passes every test. He passes the eye test. He's so composed on the ball. He was the shining star in an otherwise disappointing Southampton season last year. And then for those who need the stats to back it up, out of teenage midfielders in Europe, he's in the top three with only Bellingham and Camavinga for ball wins. So for me, he's someone who could be the heir to Fabinho's throne, who was a great servant for Liverpool.
Well, yeah, I mean, and talking about the midfield there at Liverpool, how much do you need reinforcements in that area? That's the area that everyone was talking about last season.
Everyone is looking, Liverpool fans were looking for that specialist holding midfielder, but I think there's more optimism than perhaps we've seen. This pre-season's been amazing, and when you look at the midfield people that Liverpool have brought in, there's versatility throughout. McAllister has played in that deep lying, fair be it in a 2, but he's someone who could slot in. We've got Szoboszlai, who started out on the wing, who's now looks more of an 8 for Liverpool. So we've got immense versatility in the players that we do have in our ranks. It's going to be a really big season for someone like Curtis Jones, who could cement himself as a Liverpool player or perhaps not make the grade, which is the big question that's been hanging over his head. So we've got really good versatility throughout our midfield, and I think we're just missing that one person who's really happy to sit at the base of midfield over a number of years. But there are people like Bajcetic, who I thought had an amazing breakthrough season last year, who can certainly contribute. And then there's that big question of where Trent Alexander-Arnold will fit in for Liverpool this season. Will it be at right back as an inverted fullback, or will he take up that base position or an 8 position for Liverpool? But we've got immense versatility in this Liverpool midfield now. I just think we're missing that key piece at the base midfield who's happy to sit there week in, week out.
And in terms of the business that you've done so far, we mentioned that you've got a little bit done early. How pleased are you with it?
Yeah, it's great. McAllister was one of my favourite players to watch last season. He's an all-round midfielder. We saw in the World Cup for Argentina, we saw for Brighton throughout the season how incredible he is and how much he's going to contribute. And then Szoboszlai, those who have been watching the Bundesliga, was the standout player for his club last season. And again, a versatile player who can play in any of those front 4 positions. But having that little bit of extra time in pre-season, it looks, I've given into hope in pre-season, but it looks from all the video content and how they've shaped up in pre-season that Szoboszlai especially and McAllister have fitted in perfectly into the Liverpool group.
Where else is there on the pitch that you feel that you might need to strengthen, if anywhere?
Well, look, I'd say before Henderson and Fabinho moved off, Liverpool were probably looking for another defender. Virgil van Dijk still top of his game, but wasn't stellar last season. He's going to be 34 at the end of his contract coming to an end. So we are going to be needing someone who can maybe take up his position as a long-standing centre half. We've got Konate. I'd love Joe Gomez to return back to the title win in Joe Gomez that we saw, and Matip is obviously great when he's fit, but often isn't. So I think they'd be looking to add, if we can add a centre-back and if we get Lavia over the line, it will be an immense window for us Liverpool fans.
Two of our panellists here, Liam, have just had a mega argument, a huge argument about whether Chelsea are a top 6 squad. What are Liverpool's hopes for the season?
I think we'll compete again. I think we'll be much closer to the top of the table, and I'd like to think we'll be given. I mean, the Premier League this season looks so exciting. So many clubs have added. It's been an amazing summer for transfers. Whether Chelsea are a top 6, I'm not going to get myself in any trouble. But for Liverpool, I think we've got to think that we can now again compete with Manchester City and perhaps Arsenal for that top spot.
Thanks, Liam. Great to see you.
And you, take care.
Now, coming up, more developments reaching us from Sky Germany. Bayern Munich's hierarchy travelling to London now for talks with the Tottenham chair, Daniel Levy, over the potential sale of Harry Kane. More after the break. Well, we better go back to Harry Kane. The news we brought you a few moments ago from Sky in Germany. Florian Plettenberg is reporting that Bayern bosses are on their way to London right now to meet Daniel Levy. There are negotiations in place for the next few days, and Bayern want to finalise the deal this week. As for Harry Kane, he's just waiting on an agreement between the two clubs. That's from Sky in Germany, and we understand that if there is no agreement, Harry Kane will stay at Tottenham and will just get on with his job. As for you, as for Sam, it turns here, it looks like here, his only problem is agreeing the fee. Everything else should fall into place if they can get that fee agreed.
Yeah, I think so. There's not really major competition in signing him, even though every top team in the world would love to have Harry Kane in their squad. Daniel Levy's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to sell to a Premier League rival. Real Madrid seem to be waiting out for Mbappe. So there doesn't really seem like there's any other top team that are needing a striker. You know, Bayern Munich already, we saw what happened with Sadio Mane. That didn't work out. Tuchel is a big admirer of Harry Kane as well. And I think if they're able to agree for a fee, I think this deal will happen quite quickly. I don't think there's going to be any opposition. I know PSG said that they are keen on, you know, entering the conversation if they're unable to agree anything. But I think Bayern will still be favourites.
If there is a fee agreed, though, Dan, and that fee is made public, because let's be honest, we would find out what the fee is there a chance there that someone else goes, right, that's how much it costs, we can afford that, we go in there despite all the work that Bayern Munich have done?
No, I think Sam's right. I think at this stage as well, if Kane's going to leave, he'll probably have his heart set on buying. It seems to be the move that everyone's been talking about for months now. So I don't envisage anyone else being able to come back in for him. I think the other Premier League teams would have been hoping that he'd see out the season at Spurs, have another great season, score another 20 to 30 goals, and then Harry Kane would be able to choose where he went at the end of the season. Because I think on a free, I'm not sure Harry Kane makes the move to Bayern Munich. I think he probably goes to Manchester United, perhaps. Well, mind you, they're signing Højlund now, so maybe that's out the window. But I think at the time, he would have preferred a Premier League move. I think the longer it's gone on this summer, I think the Bayern moves perhaps appeal to him more and more. Bayern have won the league, 11 times in a row. It's an almost certainty chance of a trophy, and that's the thing that's always levelled at Harry Kane, is that he's had a great career, but he hasn't won any trophies. It's almost the certainty of going to Bayern and knowing that probably you will win a trophy. You'll be playing in the Champions League again and hopefully scoring lots of goals. So I think Bayern will be encouraged now, because if they're having these meetings, Daniel Levy, we know exactly what he's like. If meetings are happening face to face and they've been arranged, that's a positive sign for Bayern.
David, last week I asked everybody what their gut instinct was saying about what would happen with Harry Kane. What's yours?
Well, certainly in the short term, we know that he won't sign a new contract at Tottenham this summer. I think from Tottenham's point of view, from Ange Postecoglou's point of view, the way that he's been talking in press conferences on their pre-season tour, he would like the situation resolved sooner rather than later. My gut instinct would be that it would be decided one way or the other before the start of the Premier League season. So the conversations are put to bed, put to an end before the Tottenham are back on a pitch in a Premier League game. So I see it being resolved one way or the other within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think Dave's right. I think if Kane kicks off the season in a Spurs shirt and he's playing in their opening day in the Premier League, then I can't see that Spurs are going to have the time to get that deal over, because they'd need to replace him, and that's going to be a difficult deal to do, because everyone will know they'll have the Kane money, and he's impossible to replace as well. So if he starts the season, I think he'll stay at Spurs. It's
another debate, but do they need to replace him? That would be my question.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think Richarlison's not Kane, so don't get twisted. He's not going to score 30 Premier League goals. But at the same time, I think the way the striker market is, you don't necessarily want to force a move for a striker. We've seen Manchester United, and we can have the conversation about the fee and whether it makes sense, but they will be paying upwards of that for any striker, any top striker in the world.
We're now to a story that may have surprised a few of you over the weekend. It's emerged that Arsenal are interested in signing Brentford goalkeeper David Raya. Talks are ongoing behind the scenes about the next step and whether Arsenal will formalise their interest with a bid. It's thought Mikel Arteta wants Raya and Aaron Ramsdale to compete for the number one spot. Now, the reason it may have surprised you is because they've already got Aaron Ramsdale. That's the thing. But Sam, why Raya?
Because he was arguably the best keeper in the Premier League last season. You know, Brentford had the fifth best defensive record in the league, only conceded 46 goals. And when you look at his stats, he is at the top of every metric except from crosses caught, which he's second. And for a keeper that's, I believe, 6 foot, that is actually quite good. He made the most saves from outside of the box, most touches as well. His distribution is incredible. And I think for a team like Arsenal, where they want to build from the back, and some of the mistakes that you did see from Ramsdale, or some of the scares that you did see from Arsenal, is that ability to play out the back with so much pressure. And I think one of the most noticeable ones was the Southampton game, when it was high pressured situation for Arsenal. They were trying to win points, and I'm not saying Ramsdale isn't good with his feet. He's great, and their comparison is quite similar. But at the same time, I think Raya, they wanted him before. He's in his prime now. Competition for a team like Arsenal would be great, but I do think that if they do get him in, he is going to arguably be thinking that I'm going to be number one. I don't think he's coming in and saying, I'm going to be the second keeper.
Well, the Brentford boss Thomas Frank made it quite clear over the weekend that they want a sizable fee for the goalkeeper if he were to go.
I would love to get 40 million. I think that's what he's worth. I think he's one of the best keepers. I think he was one of the 4 best keepers in Premier League last season. So, what is the price for a player? What did Declan Rice? 1 year left. 1 year left. 1 year left. 105 million. Is that the price? Is that a fair price? Or, and Kane, they're talking about 1 year left, and it will cost about 150. So, keeper his best age, I think.
It's Thomas Frank giving the Brentford side there, and we've talked about the Arsenal side, but what about the Aaron Ramsdale side? Dave, what do you think he will make of all this?
Well, I think he only signed a new contract in May of this year. The contract runs until 2026 with the option of a further year. I think when he signed that contract, Aaron Ramsdale probably thought that he was going to be Arsenal's number one for the duration of that contract that he signed. I think Arteta said the quotes when he signed the new contract was, we're all looking forward to enjoying many more years of Aaron the player and the person at the football club. So certainly only a couple of months ago it looked like Aaron Ramsdale was going to be the number one going forward. And when you look at, Sam was talking about, well, Raya, if that deal happens, he'll be coming in expecting to be the number one, and Arsenal will have two top goalkeepers. But you compare that to some of the other sides in the Premier League, Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, they all have undisputed number one goalkeepers. So I wonder what the dynamic will be like. There's a link, obviously, with the Arsenal goalkeeper coach, Iñaki Kanya, has worked at Brentford before, knows David Raya well. So there's a link there. But it'd be interesting to understand what Aaron Ramsdale thoughts were when he signed that contract.
Dan, Aaron Ramsdale is quality. David Raya is quality. Can Mikel Arteta keep them both happy? Because one of them's not going to be playing.
I would say it would be very, very difficult. If you look at West Ham last season, the way they managed their goalkeeper, so Fabianski was the Premier League number one, and then in all the cup competitions, it was Areola who played, and obviously they went all the way in the Europa Conference League. But playing in the Champions League, you'd think the Premier League number one will be the Champions League number one. So then that just leaves the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, depending on how far you go. And we've seen with teams previously, when you don't have that definitive number one, you can actually add a lot of uncertainty. Chelsea have had it with Kepa and Mendy, and I don't think it did either of their performances any favours at times at Chelsea over the last few years. There was that bizarre time in 2000, I think it was, when Manchester United let Peter Schmeichel left, and they had Bosnich, Van der Gaal and Taibbi, and Alex Ferguson couldn't decide between the three of them, and that all ended up being a little bit of a mess there as well. So I would say it's very, very difficult, but Arsenal have put a lot into Ramsdale, the person. If you watch his interview when he signed the new contract, how he spoke about the club and his time there, the fans obviously really like him, not just as a goalkeeper, but as a person, and the way he is around the place and the way he is on the pitch as well. And we know Arteta puts a lot of credence into the personality and the character of players, as well as their ability. But I would say there's certain facets of the game that Raya is better at than Ramsdale, and I actually would think if Raya's in goal for Arsenal, he makes them better in an attacking sense, which I've said previously sounds weird to say for a goalkeeper. But David Raya's distribution is off the scale, by far the best distribution in the Premier League, in my opinion. He can do it all. So there is an argument to be had that Raya would actually be an upgrade.
Well, Klopp did say that when they were playing against them last season that he's basically like a number 10 because of how he started attacks and how confident he was on the ball. And I agree. I think when you look at the situation, it's going to be quite difficult to please both keepers when they're both in their prime years. They're both expecting to start. And yes, you can try and make it similar to West Ham's situation, but Fabianski's quite older, so he probably accepts that type of role as well. And Arsenal, they do have competition in every other position, but I feel like in goal is probably the hardest place to have that competition, because if you're a quality keeper, I don't think you won't want to settle for just playing in the cup competitions or just playing in the Premier League. You want to play in all the games.
Important as well, I think, to point out the amount of money, I think upwards of nearly 200 million that Arsenal have spent in this window. Their focus, from what we understand anyway, at the moment, is around outgoings and moving players on and getting some money back into the club before they talk about bringing further players in this transfer window.
Yeah, so maybe this one would not be imminent. But another story from Arsenal: Nottingham Forest are in talks to sign the goalkeeper Matt Turner. Early suggestions indicate a gap in valuation. Forest are also edging closer to signing the Manchester United goalkeeper Dean Henderson. Talks continue over a loan with an obligation to buy. It's understood Forest are in the market to sign 2 goalkeepers in this window. Right, OK, what have we got coming up on Good Morning Transfers? Manchester United, they're about to sign a new striker. Have they done the best business in the window so far? Who has? If it's not them, let us know. #TransferTalk. Welcome back. Manchester United have reached an agreement with Atalanta over Rasmus Højlund. The deal in principle is worth an initial £64 million with a further £8 million in add-ons. Atalanta went into negotiations wanting £77 million guaranteed. Right, Dan, how satisfied will Erik ten Hag be?
Once again, he's been back to this transfer window, hasn't he, by the Manchester United hierarchy, and he seems like the striker that Ten Hag had identified himself. He was the man he wanted, a young player, obviously still making his way in the game. He scored 9 goals for Atalanta last season, so he's still got some way to go in terms of his goal-scoring metrics. But I think this just shows how hard it is to buy a striker in the modern day. That market is becoming more and more difficult season in, season out. Now, the prices obviously keep rising, so it does feel a little bit like Manchester United are paying for potential, but there's enough trust with Ten Hag now that if he's identified him as the man, he's going to get that backing. I think he'll change the way Manchester United play. Slightly, they were operating a lot of the time without a natural number 9, so he'll help in that aspect. I think it keeps Rashford in his best position, and I think that's a massive thing for Manchester United. Around 30 goals last season for Rashford, but there was occasions where he did have to play through the middle, and I think all his best football came from the left-hand side. So it helps out with that kind of thing, having Rashford playing in his proper position. But it's a hell of a lot of money for someone who hasn't really proven themselves yet. You look how much Manchester City paid for Haaland a year ago, and I know every single deal is different. He had a release clause in that meant he could go for a slightly lower fee. It's a lot of money for someone that isn't a sure thing, but I like the look of him, and in time he may become a very, very good striker, but the proof will be in the pudding. He'll need to hit the ground running, I think.
I think it's a big risk, though. And the reason I say that is because when we're talking about Manchester United, arguably the biggest club in the world, you're coming in to start in that team, and we've seen a lot of players that have come in recently that have had the big fees and the big wages and the pressure of performing for Manchester United. You know, we know their fans are probably the most demanding in terms of wanting instant success because they haven't been as successful as they wanted to be after Ferguson. And I think because they've been lacking this striker, you know, this profile of a player that's going to come in and almost be the exact mould of what their manager wants, because in previous years, I think he's the youngest player that they've signed since Lukaku, and that was, 5 or 6 years ago. So they need him to hit the ground running, and I don't know if they're going to have that patience for him to do that. Maybe Martial will, probably share minutes to allow him to get up to speed with the Premier League, but I think for that price, you're expecting him to, at least have in and around 15 to 20 goals in a Premier League season.
I guess previously with Manchester United fans and the patience thing, there hasn't really been anything tangible that they can see that the club's progressing. So I think the impatience has perhaps come from that. I think now under Ten Hag, they can see that the squad's developing in a nice way. They can see that they had a good season last time out, and that they're going to try for this kind of year by year continuous progress now, Manchester United. So I think maybe if he doesn't hit the ground running, he's not on fire from week one, that Manchester United fans will stick with him. It's just, it feels like such a long time ago since Manchester United got that centre-forward signing right. I actually can't even tell you who the last centre-forward was that they signed that was a bona fide success.
I think Ibrahimovic, Cavani, you can say they had periods, but yeah, they've always in the last few years gone for those stopgaps where they know that they need a profile. Weghorst we saw in January last year, not necessarily the striker that you'd expect for goals, but it was a profile that the manager wanted, and they're definitely backing him, so we'll see if he's successful.
Well, they did have Rooney for a long time, I suppose. It kind of took that away. And if you look at that, there's the permanent transfers. Just to kind of back up your point, Sam, about the manager being backed in the transfer market ever since he came in. And Højlund there with the asterisk to it, because of course that is not done yet. Well, this is what Christian Eriksen had to say about his Danish counterpart.
He's a strong number 9. He's developed a lot in the last year from when I first saw him with national team in a year's time. So he's a very good player. He's developed, turning into just a 9, which he's played for national team. To be honest, I haven't seen that many games for Atalanta, but I know how they play, and he fitted in well there.
Has he engaged you about Manchester United, what the club's like?
Not recently. I spoke to him when we were on national team last time, but of course I've said a lot of good stuff and also said some bad stuff. But in the end, it's what's going to happen.
The actual fee, Dave, do you think that the club will be comfortable with it?
It's the obvious accusation, isn't it, that they've overpaid for a guy who's made 39 career starts. But I think United are aware of that accusation. They know they're paying for potential. They know that Erik ten Hag will be able to coach him and mould him into the player and into the style that he wants to see his Manchester United play. I think, Dan made the point, a good point about the striker market at the moment. You're looking at Harry Kane, £100 million. You're looking at Victor Osimhen, 150, maybe even £200 million. Maybe he'll sign a new contract. Those are the elite level strikers that teams can go out and get, but cost an awful lot of money. There's not really too much in the next echelon down. You're looking at paying for potential. You're looking at someone like Lois Openda, who's gone in this market, who maybe Premier League sides thought he needed another step before they take a look at him. That's why I like the Nicholas Jackson seems like a very reasonable fee for a player who has potential, who has shown flashes of being able to be a Premier League player. But you're looking at those kind of next echelon down where you're paying therefore for potential in this striker market. United overpaying, or the accusation that they're overpaying, it's not a new thing either. You look at last summer, they paid 70 million for a 30-year-old Casemiro. Obviously a great player who's fitted in. They paid 86 million for Anthony. I think Manchester United fans may well see that price tag reach its potential when the player does, maybe in a few years' time. But the difference this time is Casemiro and Anthony came in after the season started. The difference this time around is that Manchester United are being decisive. They're getting their deals done before the start of the season, and they've addressed all their needs that they needed. They needed a goalkeeper. They needed central midfield cover with, well, I say cover, but a starting central midfielder who gives them a lot out off the ball in Mason Mount and on the ball. And they needed a striker, so it takes probably their window at the moment from a 6 out of 10 up to a kind of 8 out of 10 if Højlund comes in.
Well, we've asked who's done the best business so far in the transfer window, and Nick says actually Arsenal, but Manchester United very close second, and both will challenge Manchester City in the Premier League this season. And Kate says that Aston Villa, you two will be happy to hear, have had some fantastic signings this window, best by far in my opinion. But it might not be over for Manchester United though. What's the latest in midfield, Dave?
Yeah, so I think Manchester United, from their point of view, they're looking at outgoings now, really, particularly if they're looking to bring another central midfielder in. We've talked a lot on the show about Sofian Amrabat and the potential of him coming in. In terms of outgoings, the one to talk about really is Fred. They're in discussions with Galatasaray over a move for him. Personal terms not expected to be an issue. There's a gap at the moment in terms of a potential fee for the player. Galatasaray, not the only club that's interested in Fred either. Who's now entered the final year of his contract. So if United manage to get players out, it leaves more room then for players coming in.
Right, OK, reminder that Good Morning Transfers is on at 9 a.m. every weekday between now and the deadline. So we'll be back again tomorrow. But don't worry, you've only got to wait 2 hours till you see us again, because Transfer Talk is at midday throughout the window as well until 1 o'clock. And there's plenty more as well, because we've got the Transfer Show